Power rests on two foundations: law and force. Law belongs to men, force belongs to beasts. But since the law often falls short, force becomes necessary.
They say power corrupts, but the truth is, power reveals. When someone becomes a leader, when they suddenly have control and authority over others, their true nature comes to light. Some try to rule with closeness, with affection. They want to be followed out of admiration, out of love. Others, however, choose a different path. They know love is fragile, that loyalty is fickle, and that's why they prefer to inspire respect, or even fear. So, is there a balance between sympathy and firmness? Or does power always demand sacrifice? And ultimately, is it better to be loved or feared? Today on The Sophist, we'll answer those questions. We'll explore Machiavelli's philosophy of power. We'll discover why sometimes kindness turns into weakness, a weakness others won't hesitate to exploit. I'll show you 4 effective techniques to use authority and fear strategically, to gain respect, assert control, and influence others. But without crossing the thin line into hatred. Because in a world where fragility comes at a high cost, only those who know how to inspire respect or fear are the ones who truly survive. When it comes to the question of whether it's better to be feared or loved, Machiavelli had no doubts.
It would be ideal to be both, but since it's difficult to achieve both at the same time, it is much safer to be feared than loved, if one must choose. Because people are ungrateful, fickle, deceitful, and deceptive, cowardly in the face of danger, and greedy when it comes to gain. As long as you serve their interests, they are completely devoted to you. But once they no longer need you, they turn against you.
So, does this mean we must be cruel to others? Or is Machiavelli simply showing us how power works in the real world? Being good is not always enough. You've surely been there before. You try to be kind, generous, understanding. You act in good faith, hoping others will do the same. But in the end, you're met with betrayal, abuse, and disappointment. So, is goodness a virtue or a weakness? For Machiavelli, the answer is clear. It depends on whether you want to keep power.
A prince who wishes to remain in power must learn not to be good.
Because in a world where people act out of self-interest, kindness can become a trap. Those who blindly trust in virtue without understanding human nature are doomed to lose everything. But that doesn't mean you must be cruel or unjust without reason. What Machiavelli shows us is that morality and power don't always go hand in hand. And that naive goodness is a form of suicide, because those who aspire to power cannot afford to be good all the time. In an ideal world, leaders would be fair, noble, and virtuous. But in the real world, in this cold and ruthless society, the naive are devoured by the cunning. For example, at work, the person who always says yes to everything, who never sets boundaries, ends up overworked and unrecognized. They become, unintentionally, the office fool. In personal relationships, the one who's always too accommodating, who constantly seeks approval, ends up surrounded by people who take advantage of their goodwill. Because people don't follow who they like, they follow who they respect. And in business, the one who blindly trusts others, who fails to prepare for betrayal, ends up deceived and ridiculed. You probably know someone like this, a coworker who always helps everyone, but never gets promoted. A loyal friend who's always there, but no one truly values. Or maybe someone who doesn't know how to say no and ends up being walked over by everyone. That's why Machiavelli urges us to prioritize cunning over goodness. Be fair whenever possible, but be ready to act with harshness when the situation demands it. Because there will always be people ready to exploit the weakness of others. So in case of doubt, it is always safer to be feared than loved. Why? Because, according to Machiavelli, people are less afraid of offending someone who makes himself loved than someone who makes himself feared. Because love is volatile and fragile. It's held together by gratitude, but due to the twisted nature of humans, that bond breaks the moment it's no longer useful. The vast majority of people love you as long as it benefits them. So if you rely only on others' affection, you're in danger. Today they admire you, tomorrow they forget you. Fear, on the other hand, is more stable. People who fear you won't dare betray you. They know there will be consequences, and that gives you control. Think about this. Let's say you're in a tough situation. You owe money to two people, but only have enough to pay one. Who would you pay back? Someone kind, pleasant, who's always treated you well? Or someone brutal, someone you fear, someone you know will punish you without hesitation if you don't? The answer is obvious. If you only respect someone out of affection, you'll always find an excuse. Tell yourself you're sorry, that you'll pay them back later. But if you fear them, the story changes. Because losing someone's love, even if painful, is abstract. But punishment is real. You feel it. It marks your skin and your memory, and no one forgets pain. Obviously, the ideal is not to hurt anyone, but in an imperfect world, the need does exist. And if you were forced to hurt someone, who would you choose? Someone nice, someone you like, or someone you fear, someone who will make you pay for it? In the first case, you lose their affection. In the second, you take a beating. Because when it comes down to choosing between our pain and someone else's, most people would rather let others suffer than risk losing their teeth. But beware, this doesn't mean Machiavelli promoted gratuitous cruelty. What he tells us is that morality is a luxury not everyone can afford. In a world where many are ready to betray, manipulate, and use fear as a tool, being naive is the greatest weakness. To him, power is not about morality, but about effectiveness. It's not about being good or evil, but about knowing when to be each. This doesn't mean you should be a tyrant. Machiavelli isn't saying you should inspire irrational terror. He says authority must be imposed with firmness, not with begging or empty promises. If you only seek to be loved, you'll be weak. If you only seek to be feared, you'll be hated. The balance lies in being respected. And here comes the real danger. What happens when fear turns into hatred?
A prince must avoid being despised and hated, and as long as he succeeds in that, he can endure any adversity. Because those who make themselves feared may hold on to power, but those who make themselves hated are doomed to fall.
If there's one thing Machiavelli made perfectly clear, it's that being hated is the greatest mistake a leader can make. Hatred creates enemies, it generates contempt, and sooner or later, it turns against you. Machiavelli draws a key distinction. Well-managed fear generates respect. It's the kind of authority that makes others take you seriously. It allows people to understand that every action has a consequence. Hatred, on the other hand, is poison. If people feel you abuse your power, that you exploit them, that you humiliate them, they won't take long to seek your downfall. And this isn't just political theory. It's something we live every day. At work, a strict boss can be respected. But a boss who humiliates their employees will be betrayed at the first opportunity. In the family, a parent who sets fair limits is a true authority figure. But if those limits are imposed with disdain, with arbitrary punishments, they only breed resentment and hostility. The key principle is this: never touch someone's property or their dignity.
Men forget more quickly the death of their father than the loss of their fortune.
Why? Because when you touch someone's money, reputation, or honor, the resentment you create is permanent, and your eventual fall becomes inevitable. And so the real question emerges: how can we exercise authority and be respected without being hated. I'll show you 4 effective techniques to use authority and fear strategically, to gain respect, assert control, and influence others. First, the technique of saying no without losing authority. It's about setting boundaries without unnecessary explanations. Those who try to please everyone end up being seen as weak. Learn to refuse requests firmly. A simple, "No, that's not possible," with a steady tone and eye contact is enough. Don't hesitate. Don't apologize for enforcing your limits. And never over-explain. If a coworker constantly asks you for favors that aren't your responsibility and you always say yes, it will eventually be seen as your obligation. But if one day you say, "I can't do that," with no excuses, they'll understand that there's a boundary. Second, the technique of selective punishment and strategic reward. This isn't about punishing for the sake of punishment, but doing it when necessary and in a calculated way. A public reprimand to someone who crosses the line sends a clear message to everyone else. But you must also reward loyalty at the right moment. If you reward obedience unpredictably, you create a sense of stability that maintains control without relying too heavily on fear. A leader who overlooks minor faults but acts decisively against betrayal shows they're not to be underestimated. At the same time, one who rewards loyalty strategically strengthens their power without needing to impose it. Third, the technique of anticipating betrayal before it happens. Machiavelli warned that people are fickle and act out of convenience. Don't wait to be betrayed before you react. Watch for the signs: changes in attitude, evasiveness, lack of commitment. If you sense someone could turn against you, take it seriously before it's too late. Sometimes the best strategy isn't confrontation, but neutralizing the threat before it grows. If a business partner starts acting cold and avoids certain topics, they might be planning a move against you. Instead of waiting for the betrayal, act first. Reinforce your position and make it clear that you're alert. And fourth, the technique of balanced power. How to earn respect without being hated. This means combining firmness with cunning. Be ruthless when necessary, but never humiliate. Correct in private when possible, and punish in public only when absolutely necessary. Protect your allies and give them reasons to stand by your side, not just out of fear, but because they benefit from it. A boss who asserts authority without belittling their team will earn respect. A leader who balances discipline with recognition will inspire true loyalty. Because real power is not imposed, it's built with intelligence and foresight. To conclude, we must say that Machiavelli understood something most people choose to ignore. People change their loyalty depending on what benefits them. If you rely only on others' love, they'll fail you. If you rely only on fear, they'll betray you. That's why real power isn't about being liked or feared. It's about knowing how to calibrate, when to be firm and when to be flexible, when to set limits and when to allow closeness, when to be feared and when to be loved. And now tell me, in what moments of your life was it more useful to be feared? And in which ones did being loved bring you better results? Do you believe it's possible to lead with authority while being kind all the time? I'd love to hear your opinion. Share your experience in the comments, and let's explore together which strategies work best in today's world. As for me, I commit to replying to each and every comment. And please, don't let this video remain just theory. Turn it into a practical tool to transform and improve your life and the lives of others. And if you want to keep exploring the ideas of history's greatest thinkers, subscribe to The Sophist to stay updated with our latest videos. Because in this game, those who don't understand power end up being devoured by it.